The man walked up to the little boy with a smile on his face, ready to take the little boy away from his parents to another dimension. Hi friends! Today I will be telling you guys about the story of the haunted campsite of Avatar World. Jake was 12 when he first went camping without his parents. It was a week-long trip with his scout group to Wendigo Pines, a campsite deep in the forest near a wide, silent lake. The trees there were tall and close together, blocking out the sky even during the day. At night, the only light came from flashlights and the crackling campfire. It was raining outside, but the kids still gathered up to listen to what stories their leader had conjured up. Jake wasn't so keen on listening to the story as the rain had already ruined his mood. He knew camping at night was a bad idea. Regardless, he kept an ear open, just in case he could hear something interesting. On the first night, their scout leader, Mr. Hall, told a story to scare them before bed. Years ago, he began, a man named Mr. Caldwell came here every summer. He'd bring his canoe, paddle across the lake, and fish all day long. One year, he went out and never came back. They say his canoe washed up, empty, right where you pitched your tent, Jake. Everyone turned and looked at Jake. He laughed nervously, but the story gave him a weird feeling in his stomach. Jake felt a bit off now. First the rain, and now some lost guy's canoe being where he pitched his tent. Could this day get any worse? Jake could also feel like somebody was watching him, as if Jake was taking up the space of someone, or he was disturbing someone's serenity just by pitching his tent there. Maybe his leader was telling a true story? Jake shrugged it off. They never found his body, Mr. Hall continued, but campers say they've seen a man standing at the edge of the lake late at night. He just stares across the water waiting for something or someone. The fire popped, and a cold wind whispered through the trees. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the tent made his heart race. Around midnight, he needed to pee, so he unzipped his sleeping bag and slipped on his sneakers. The woods were dark, and the flashlight barely helped. He tiptoed out toward the trees, staying close to camp. When he was done, he turned to head back, but froze. Someone was standing by the lake. The figure was tall, wearing an old-fashioned coat and boots. He stood completely still, facing the water. Jake thought he was dreaming at first. He thought due to his camp leader telling him the story of this person going missing from his canoe years ago, he was now having a nightmare about him. Jake pinched himself to see whether he was dreaming or not, and to his shock, he was not. He was living the moment, and that figure truly was standing in front of him by the lake. His knees felt weak, he wanted to run but could not. Curiosity had gotten the best of him. He needed to know what had happened to him. Jake whispered, "Mr. Hall?" But the man didn't move. Jake turned off his flashlight and crouched behind a tree. He peeked out again. The man was gone. Jake ran back to his tent and didn't sleep the rest of the night. He still couldn't believe what went down. He wiggled around in his tent all night, questioning himself what to do, whether he should tell his friends about what had occurred. What if they think he was just making stuff up for attention? Jake, after a bit more thinking, finally decided he would talk to everyone about his experience, whether he gets shunted for it or not. He needs to figure out what was happening in this camp, no matter the cost. The next morning, Jake told the others what he saw. Some of the boys laughed. One kid, Sam, said, "You were half asleep. Probably just saw a tree stump." But Jake knew what he saw, and the creepy part was, he hadn't told anyone where his tent was when Mr. Hall said the canoe washed up there. That evening, Jake avoided going near the lake. While the others played games, he stayed by the fire, staring at the shadows between the trees. Later that night, Jake tried to convince himself it was just a dream. Still, he left his flashlight on when he got into his sleeping bag. But around 1 a.m., it flickered and went out. Jake opened his eyes and listened. Everything was quiet. Then he heard something. A faint sloshing sound, like someone walking through shallow water. He slowly unzipped his tent door and peeked out. At the lake's edge stood the same man facing the water. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The man turned slightly, just enough that Jake could see part of his face. It was pale, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes were deep and sunken, but not angry, just sad. Jake zipped the tent shut and didn't move for the rest of the night. The next morning, Jake had dark circles under his eyes. He told Mr. Hall about the man. Mr. Hall didn't laugh, he looked serious. I made up that story, Mr. Hall said, but I've heard similar ones from the rangers around here. They say sometimes people hear splashing late at night or see wet footprints near the tents in the morning. We even had a park ranger who got lost in the woods once, and by the time we found him, he was in complete shock. He couldn't move or speak. After we took him to the hospital and he recovered, he told us a voice had guided him towards the rescue team, but he was scared for his life. The night still haunts the ranger, and not to mention he quit his job right after he recovered. When we try to talk to him about the incident, he just shuts up and does not talk about it no matter the cost. He really was traumatized. Jake looked down. His shoes were damp. He hadn't been near the water. That evening, Jake asked to move his tent closer to the others. Mr. Hall let him. Jake hoped being near people would keep the man away. But that night, the air was thick and still. No wind, no frogs, not even crickets. Just silence. Jake lay in his bag, heart pounding. Then he heard it again, sloshing. This time, it was closer. Jake sat up and listened. The sound wasn't coming from the lake, it was near the tents. He reached for his flashlight and turned it on. Outside his tent, there were wet footprints in the dirt. They stopped right in front of his tent flap. Jake froze. He didn't dare unzip the tent. Then came a whisper, barely audible through the canvas. "Help!" Jake held his breath. The whisper came again. "Help me!" Jake opened the flap just an inch. No one was there. The footprints led away from his tent, down toward the water. Against every instinct, Jake grabbed his flashlight and followed. The footprints led to the lake, then stopped at the edge. Jake looked around, heart hammering. Then he saw the man again, standing waist-deep in the water. Jake lifted his flashlight and the man looked up. His face was sad, pleading. Help me," he whispered again. Jake's voice trembled. "What do you want?" The man slowly raised his hand and pointed to the middle of the lake. Jake looked. Something was floating there, half sunk. He squinted. It was a canoe. Jake looked back to the man, but he was gone. The next day, Jake told Mr. Hall everything. He expected him to laugh or tell him to get more sleep. But instead, Mr. Hall walked to the ranger station. Later that afternoon, a group of park rangers paddled out to the middle of the lake. They pulled something out of the water. It was an old rusted tackle box. Inside was a faded driver's license. The name read, Thomas Caldwell. Jake didn't see the man again after that, but sometimes when he thinks back to Wendigo Pines, he wonders, was the ghost trying to haunt him or just asking for someone to finally find him? Jake didn't forget that summer. After the rangers found Mr. Caldwell's tackle box, camp went on as usual. No more sightings, no more whispers. Jake finished the week, went home, and told no one except his parents. They didn't believe in ghosts, but they listened. That should have been the end of it. But 3 months later, Jake got a letter. It was from the Wendigo Forest Service, addressed to him personally. Inside was a note from one of the rangers. "Jake, we thought you might want to know. After retrieving the tackle box, we looked into Thomas Caldwell's case. Turns out he owned a small fishing cabin across the lake, abandoned for over 30 years. No one's been inside since. We plan to investigate this fall. If you're interested in seeing it, let us know. Ranger N. Delgado." Jake showed his parents. After some convincing, they agreed to drive him up for the weekend under one condition. They'd come too. The weather was cold when they arrived. The lake looked darker, the trees barer. Ranger Delgado met them at the dock, and they paddled across to the other side, somewhere Jake had never been. The cabin was barely visible through the trees. Small, rotting porch. Broken windows. It looked like something from a horror movie. Inside, dust coated everything. Old furniture, a rusted lantern, a cracked photo frame showing a man. Jake recognized him, Mr. Caldwell. Jake stepped deeper into the cabin. There was a table with yellowed papers, some maps of the lake, and a faded notebook. He opened it. Fishing logs, mostly. But near the end, the writing changed. More rushed. Uneven.